My name's Sophie Humphreys and I work at Fabric, which is a strategic dance organisation. I'm the engagement producer and I'm the programme manager of this artist development project. This project is part of a wider legacy programme which is called Keep Moving, which is funded by the United by 22 legacy charity from the Commonwealth Games. And it's an evolution of the project that was called Critical Mass, which was a mass participation project as part of the Commonwealth Games. So this is part of the legacy of that, and where do we go next? And now that there is this desire for more disabled people to be in creative opportunities, where is that next step in terms of that career progression? So we have invested in 2 companies that are going to offer 2 artist development opportunities for 2 disabled individuals. The process was about identifying different organisations that work in different ways. So we're working with Angeli Dance Company, who work predominantly with learning disabled dancers. They are a small company that are project funded, based in the Midlands. They are going to be working with one of their existing dancers called Nick, who is a learning disabled artist who wants to create more work and become a choreographer. And then on the other hand, we wanted to look at a large-scale touring company who are also an MPO, so we have been speaking with Motion House, and Motion House are going to offer a shadowing placement as part of their creation of Hidden, so that a disabled artist can shadow Kevin, the artistic director, through that process and really understand what it means to make a piece of work on that scale with the amount of dancers that are involved in that, and what the production elements are, the lighting elements, the technical things you need to consider, so that artist is going to get a real insight into how to create a production from start to finish. So very, very different experiences for these 2 artists, and that's going to give us some really rich insight into different ways to offer different kind of models in disabled leadership opportunities and how this can be done in different ways.
I'm Alex and I'm director of Angeli Dance Company.
I'm Becky, I'm Director of Engagement from Fabric.
I'm Paul Russ, I'm the Artistic Director and Chief Executive of Fabric. So I suppose the project comes about solely because there'd been a collective effort in dance across the region to respond to the Commonwealth Games and to create the conditions where anybody that wanted to be part of this incredible moment for a place could in some way feature, could be part of it and make a contribution. And as an outcome of that, when you start to think about what's the legacy of those moments, people don't just go back to their lives. People continue dancing, and dance leaders emerge from those participants. Dance workers and people with desires to work in dance emerged. And so what does a real legacy look like? It's not just the continuation of those activities, because that's impossible in many ways, but how can this last bit of investment from United by 22 give us an opportunity to just develop one step further the potential for legacy to happen, to be possible. And what we saw was people moving into employment or having desires to do so. So what conditions can you create in the region that make that happen? The desire for this project was to say, okay, well, for disabled creative people working in dance, have a desire to work in dance, what other places and spaces can be opened up that in the future you might see that opportunity when it comes and put yourself into it. Also in companies and structures to be open to different lived experiences and perspectives coming into those roles.
Hello, I'm Nick Nicero. I have set up this lovely project that I want to work on. So I'm in the middle of creating my own work by choreographing and directing my piece I'm creating at the moment, and developing and looking into R&D of making things work that I've got in my lifespan, building my life into a contemporary dance piece.
My name is Gary Clark and I am an artistic director and choreographer, and I'm choreographing a work in collaboration with Nick from Angeli. So I've been working really closely with Nick to design essentially an autobiographical solo which looks at Nick's life and all the episodes that have happened in his life to kind of get him to the stage where he is now. So we've been really kind of unpicking and interrogating what those episodes are and what we want to say with those episodes. To create a piece of dance theatre, so it's a piece of storytelling, it has a real clear narrative. And really kind of using Nick's skills and leaning into his strengths and his desires and wants and his personal life, and try to kind of represent that the best we can in a cohesive piece of work.
I have learned really hard on making ideas for direction, the way I want it for a solo. Do this, don't do that, that kind of process.
Hi, my name is Sander. I use the he/they pronouns, and I'm here to shadow Kevin. So currently I want to gain more experience with being in the process and seeing the whole process and imagining what I would want to see in those moments and dive into it, but also get to know all the other roles that other people actually have, and to also see the communication in between the different people. And in this case, like Kevin also interacts with it, and also the ideas that he has and in what order everything needs to happen to get the end product. I think after this, it's to go out there, start my own project, so I can actually use all the tools that I've gained, but also really use the knowledge I have and kind of, it's almost like kind of just testing out the exact same things, see how that would work for me.
I'm Louise, I'm founder and executive director of Motion House. So when we were approached to explore whether or not we might be able to offer a project, the thing that was immediately really exciting to us was to utilise our own creative process in order to create a professional development opportunity for a disabled artist. It's an unusual and quite unique offer. Usually the creative process takes place behind closed doors. It's unusual for there to be a chunk of time that can be dedicated to process, and to be able to offer somebody the opportunity to follow that whole process and therefore see every stage of development of the show through to premiere. So we thought that was a really exciting starting point for a project.
So this is a first for Anjali. Previous to the Fabric Keep Moving project, we'd supported Nick through a Developing Your Own Creative Practice award through Arts Council, and that really started to explore the transition from performer to choreographer. But this project has been the perfect next step because we've been able to test some of that applied learning in a real life environment, and because there's been no false outcomes, it's allowed us to be really process driven and really responsive, and that's then allowed us to gain a lot of learning around a case study or a version of a roadmap that other people can hopefully learn from, and that we can then support with our other Anjali dancers to progress to when the time is right for them.
The work that has happened for decades actually to create integrated spaces, inclusive spaces, is wonderful, but we're still not seeing major parts of a dance ecology put diverse bodies and minds on stage, and that for me still feels really remiss. That how are people sitting in audiences or participating in classes seeing that route for themselves?
Yeah.
So that dance has to do a lot of work to make that possible, I think.
100%, and I think there is also this historic perception around inclusive practice and all of this brilliant work happening in communities that have been very community-based or therapeutic-based or for well-being, which absolutely can be all of those things. But in terms of having ambition of what it can do in terms of being on stage, being in some of these leading creative roles, there's a real lack of awareness because there is no visibility of people in those roles. So until that happens, we're always going to be behind the change that needs to happen.
Yeah. It's almost like you can't be what you can't see. There's no progression route there at the moment, or there's limited. So it's almost like you have to chip away at every level continuously to find the breakthroughs. It's not one thing. You can't start with one thing first, just getting the people on stage. Well, where do they come from? They need to have that progression route. Yeah. So it's chipping away at every stage.
Yeah.
It's been incredible to see Nick develop and grow over the course of the process. We were really keen that the process was broken up into kind of small chunks over a long period of time, so there is moments of growth and reflection. I think we've really seen that, not only just as an artist, but as a leader, as a promoter of his own work. He's now able to really speak about his work in a real kind of intelligent and articulate way. He really knows what the work is and where it's come from and what the purpose is. And he's also really grown in terms of seeing the work past the studio, but where the potential is for it to potentially go on tour, but also what what the work needs in terms of its infrastructure, marketing, funding. He's already talking about audience development. And that's just really lovely to kind of see him, you know, kind of transfer from an artist into an artistic director, almost into a promoter and producer. I think we've tried really hard to ensure that through the process, not only are we giving him the opportunity to create and be artistic, but to really think about the work as a package, as a product. So it's fair to say that we've had a lot of conversations in the room around that. It's not just about making work, it's not just about the artistic content, but everything else that surrounds the art, which we all know in the industry is a big part of it. It's one thing making work, but it's another thing getting it out there and getting it seen and making sure that people are interested in what you're doing. And he's really well positioned to do that now. So it's been lovely to see that trajectory, to see that growth, and to really see and hear the change in language and how Nick's speaking about his own work. It's a real joy to watch, to witness.
I think we all seek to grow in everything that we do, and I think there's been real tangible growth for all parties in this project. I can only speak from my own observations, but I think I've really seen Sander grow in confidence, his ability to articulate his observations, his engagement in conversation and creative conversation, the grasping of opportunities to dynamically explore. I've seen all of those aspects of him as an artist grow. He's become really open in talking about his own work, his future projects, his plans. And I think that's a wonderful thing to see. I think all artists have to be encouraged to come out of their shell and find their space and find their voice. And parallel to that, as a company, through inviting Sander and also Emma into our process, it has challenged us to think differently about how we engage on every level. The way we talk about the work, the vocabulary that we use, the pacing of the day, the opportunities for breaks for conversation, understanding in a practical way, not just a theoretical way, about the need for different artists to engage with a day in a different way. I feel like I've got a much deeper understanding of that, and as a company that's been really important for us.
I think it's incredibly important to have projects like this around, especially coming from disabled community and knowing how hard it is for other disabled artists to kind of just to educate themselves, especially if you're disabled before university age and that kind of thing. It is a very different way of getting into the arts. It's incredibly important to have something like this because I can really get into it. And it is an opportunity that you otherwise would have had through universities. So it's incredible to have that same experience without going the same route.
Hello, my name's Kevin Finnan. I am the Artistic Director of Motion House and one of its co-founders with Louise Richards. And I'm also the choreographer of Motion House, having choreographed all Motion House's shows. It's interesting because over the process, his depth of questioning has deepened. As we all do, we all come in with our set idea of who we are and what we're doing. But then when you're engaging in a living process that's growing, and you're being challenged and you're being developed, and his thoughts about making a work appear to me to be changing and developing, and I hope that that's the case for him, really. It's very interesting because I'm just making my work, and I'm very clear with him and with Emma. There is a period of time in which to get this done, and it's defined by money. You have to find a way of controlling the timeline and making sure that you can deliver it on the time, because that's the only time you will get. So with all of these things, you make the best you can in the time you have.
So I'm Rachel Liggett, and my role is many things. Part of my role is to support Nick, and that means really practical access support. So it's meeting him at the train station, finding the location, checking into the hotels, and that's a really key support role. And then one of my other roles is just a really ongoing dialogue with Nick, working on the schedule together, the plan of action, how it's going to work when we're up in the 4 locations. And then in the studio, I see my role as really 2 parts. So one is to support Gary's directorial role and to reinforce and support that with Nick, and also to have that consistent dialogue with Gary and just looking at the work and what's arising and talking about it, and then documenting that. And then really there's a bit of a rehearsal director role, so those moments where Gary's managing the music edits, having an interview, whatever that is, I'm then holding that space for Nick. And that's when we go over the cues, we go over the material, you might have a 5-minute break if he needs it. So that constant check-in and holding of space.
I think this project has been really successful in lots of different ways. From just observing Rach, Gary and Nick in the studio, you can see like the pure joy and all that they've achieved. But also seeing Nick in wider context, so outside of this project back in the main company and in himself as an individual, his confidence, his self-perception, his ability to articulate his own thoughts has just massively come on. These are all things that we didn't necessarily anticipate, but it has had a wider impact. And we're really excited about where the project can lead us to next. So this has enabled us to apply for an Arts Council project grant for Nick to hopefully develop the work further into a piece of touring work. And then Nick has also just been commissioned by Liberty Festival in London as an R&D artist. So he's already getting recognition for the work he's done. And that's brilliant because it allows us to keep going on this trajectory of progression for him. And it allows Angeli as a company to really understand what it takes to support mid-career learning disabled artists beyond the life of a performer as such, or in other roles as well as a performer. And then what that means is that we can really think about how we strategically position ourselves in the sector to address some of the challenges that are there and the gaps that continue to exist.
I think for Fabric, the next steps with this kind of artist development work for disabled creatives is really just taking it one step further. We've been able to support 2 individuals and 2 organisations, and I think taking the learning from that and making it a wider offer to other organisations who want to do similar work and make similar opportunities accessible is where we would want to take this, widening the reach, widening the amount of disabled creatives that can access these types of things, sharing that learning beyond just these 2 organisations, and really making some change in how arts policies and arts opportunities are presented across the sector would be a huge step forward.